Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, Ben.
Hi, Jeremy. Happy Friday.
Yes, happy Friday to you. I realise I put the wrong title screen up. It said Bonfire Night on it. That was last week's. If anyone's confused, it's not Bonfire Night tonight.
Just put Christmas on it or whatever. Easter.
Yeah, Easter. Yeah, will do. Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, technology, change, innovation, you name it, we look at it. This week we have a guest. Peter Clark is coming in to talk to us about technology, change, the London market, all sorts of things. So look forward to that. But as always, let's start with the news. Start with your news, Ben. What do you want to go for first? Tulips or competitiveness?
Let's do competitiveness.
Okay. So yeah, so this is an interesting story. We were just talking before we came on air about the kind of the regulations and these tensions that seem to be developing over different stakeholders. But yeah, go for it.
Yeah, okay. And it's not about HelloFresh, which is obviously a very good product in its own right. This is the change of stance from the government mainly, which will be enforced through the regulator, which they're flagging to say that there will be a competitive requirement element of the new regulatory post-Brexit system. And this means, and this is something that has actually been done before, and there's some controversy around it. And the controversy is that if you put a competitive kind of clause into a regulatory system, that means that you effectively lighten the regulatory touch, and you potentially open up the system to what happened around the financial crash, which is largely what the Bank of England's stance has been on this, but not the government. So this is not an unusual thing to have in a regulatory regime, and I'll come on to insurance in a second, because places like Singapore and other markets do have these, and I've actually done a lot of work in Singapore, and when you go and speak to the Singapore Monetary Authority there, the interesting thing about it is that it has both a marketing arm, in other words, the champion of the market, which does all sorts of interesting and I think quite positive things for the market, and then it has the quite scary regulatory side of things. So you go into this the very big building for the MAS in Singapore, and you kind of have the dark and the light side, I suppose. But this is whether that's where the government is going to go, because this is kind of secondary stuff. It's not quite as overt as it would be, say, in the Singapore market, but it is a model. There's an FT article today that says it's not a positive thing, so that's their view. The London Market Group and others in other trade organisations have been campaigning for this with government, and we'll see it as a victory for their lobbying. In part for the insurance industry, where there has been a feeling that there's been too much regulation. That's always the feeling, but that this will help the city post Brexit to market. I think it's a tricky one. The problem comes partly that if you do get an issue in a market, which could be put down to the fact that you were too light touch, then you cause immense damage to a market. Investors run a mile.
Yeah.
But the upside, of course, is if you encourage, better competition and growth, then that's a benefit. So I think it's a balance. But it's very Marmite. People seem to fall on one side or the other. But it's going to be interesting, certainly for the insurance market, if it means that regulation has a kind of growth, competitive marketing element to it, which it hasn't had for the last few years. It's been all about the customers' protection, which we've talked about quite a bit.
Yeah, and that was and that's, you know, if you look at in personal lines with the removing of dual pricing next year,
Fair
and
value.
the fair value coming in, and those types of, you know, that's why that I think there's a bit of there is a tension there between the two groups, certainly. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other thing, Jeremy, is that, which has been said, and I can see this, is that in the end, you know, you want to keep regulation as simple as possible, not just whether it's right or it's wrong, because it doesn't all work, of course. But the trouble is you're adding more and more things to people to think about. And I think I saw that Aviva the other day was saying, wow, we've got quite a tricky period ahead to work through fair value. And they have. And then they got this now. So they were thinking, oh, God, you know, we've got to work through fair value. And then we get this. So I imagine it's going to be quite difficult for boards to get the mindset right. In a way, I don't know whether it wasn't easier just to say, look, the regulator is going to be about the customer, so keep your focus on that, as opposed to, you know, and it's really hard, I think, to keep the balance, because, you know, the temptation is going to be to use this as a stick to beat the regulator. So I'm not sure about it. I think it feels, you know, a bit PR-y in some ways, but not necessarily going to make a big difference. I don't know. And it could be dangerous, potentially. We'll see.
We'll see. Okay, so from regulation to tulips. Now, this isn't a piece of news that I saw, but you picked it out, Ben. It says tulip, but quite a building, that.
Yeah, this was a building it's been talked about for quite a while, and look at it there. It's kind of an interesting shape, isn't it? Norman Foster, I believe, which he always seems to have these kind of phallic symbols for some reason, but like the gherkin and stuff like that. But yeah, so this it was going to be somewhere near Tower Bridge, I think, and Michael Govers ruled it out, saying that it wouldn't be fitting, you know, with the city skyline as it currently is. I don't know. I kind of like that picture. It's sort of interesting. The other argument has been it doesn't do much because it's just basically a big sky garden with not much below it. You know, it doesn't create any real estate.
Right.
Which is not that I can imagine they need more real estate in London, having been there a few times in the last couple of weeks. I'd say that less is probably better, but what do I know?
Yeah. There we are.
So, and then there was in the FT, they did this article, and there was a good quote underneath: "Is the last thing the City of London needed is an even bigger bell end dominating the skyline." So I think that's the epitaph of the tulip. Yeah. So the tulip is no more.
Oh, that's good. I love that. I'm going to talk a bit more about the FT being funny in a second with my news. But yeah, that's good. I missed that, Ben. But I think on the face of it, I'm glad it's not going ahead. But anyway,
it's like no news. It's not even news. It's no news. It's not going.
It's no news. Yeah, nothing's happening here.
No, it's a picture.
It's a picture. Right. So I've got a bit of news. So this week has been the week of the metaverse. And this morning, Disney is the latest firm to announce that it's going to get involved in the metaverse. And again, they've been pretty funny with their kind of reporting of the story. But basically, the metaverse is the kind of the virtual world combining with the physical world to create this bizarre place. And Facebook has been involved in it, and Microsoft have been talking about investing in it as well. I mean, there's lots of, if you look back at the history of the term metaverse, it actually goes back to 1978, and it starts off as a lot of these things do in fiction, and then goes through into games. So there's quite a lot of games. The main one being Pokemon Go, which was, you kind of had to find them on your phone a few years ago. Yeah. But I think with the concept, Yeah, I didn't get into that. With the onset, the development of technology, I think it's becoming an interesting area for these geeks. So yeah, that's just a bit of a description of what it is. And then this in the FT, Robert Schmerzy, who I haven't read his work before, but this is a brilliant article. It's so funny. It's the funniest thing. And he just goes on to talk about the metaverse. Mark Zuckerberg has renamed himself Mark Metaberg. And his Metaberg avatar is completely different in character, not obsessed by money, and way less deserving of congressional oversight. Metaberg is now planning to build a new and much kinder world in which people are nice, landscapes are spectacular, residents are delighted with adverts tailored to their personal interests. And it goes on. It's such a good. In fact, I'm going to put it in the chat because it's such a funny article. It's only like a 5-minute read as well.
He's really good, Robert Shrims. I definitely recommend him. Yes,
I think you can follow him as well. And he goes on to say, in the metaverse, do you have to meet Nick Clegg? It's not compulsory, but he still feels bad about the tuition thing. But anyway, it's good. So yeah, that's the metaverse this week.
It's all part of this thing, though, isn't it? With tech companies, these big tech companies. In other words, that hype of everything, that they want to own everything. They want to almost, this is about like owning human beings. We don't want to just be in the virtual space. We've got to also be in the physical space. It's a really in some ways it's quite a sinister thing, is that Google, I think Google once said something about we want to be the thing that knows everything about everything, and that's like, I'm not sure you can do that, but it's and this is just weird, but they probably have some notion or vision of what it's actually going to be like.
I guess so. Who knows? Anyway, we'll perhaps talk a little bit more with Peter about the metaverse and how it might impact insurance. So, with that, let's introduce our guest this week. So we're going to welcome back, if I can find him, Peter Clark. Here we go. Who MD and founder of InsurerCorp. Hello, Peter. Good to see you again.
Hello, gentlemen. Likewise.
So let's start with with a bit of news that we actually previewed last week, and you are a winner, Peter. Look at this.
Yeah.
Insurance Times Technology and Innovation Awards 2021. Peter Clark. There you go. Was that a surprise, Peter, or did you know about it? How did they do it?
Absolutely, it was a surprise. I mean, I knew of the nomination for a while, but we were going against some well-established people, some people I've got a lot of time and respect for. I know I've done some fantastic things in the market, so to come out on top was a real privilege, but definitely a surprise. And I think that can be told by my face when they announced my name. A lot of people commented on how surprised I looked when they said it. But no, it's a real privilege to win it, and especially coming out of a year where technology's been so key to the market. It's had wider adoption than ever before, and it's good to be at the forefront of that, really.
Why do you think you won it, Peter? I mean, I know might sound a strange question. If you could be modest about it,
because more people voted for me.
Oh yeah, okay, that's fair enough. Yeah,
simple as that. But I mean, we really just put it out to our clients, and we just said, Peter Clark's up for this award, and if you've liked using our service over the past year or couple of years you've been using it, please do help him get the recognition that, obviously this coming from my team, that they believed I deserved. So no, it was a real privilege, and obviously this was one award that was actually put out to vote to people. It wasn't done by the judges themselves, and so it's it's validation, and obviously what we're doing, and that we're moving in the right direction, and that people are seeing value in what we're delivering from technology. But as I say to everybody, I can't really claim the award as a champion myself. I wouldn't be anywhere without my team and sort of all the people around us that have sort of helped us get to where we are, and our clients for being open-minded, adopting what we're doing, and really engaging with our platform.
I've got a tear in my eye, Peter.
I know.
Well rehearsed.
We've never had such emotion on this show.
So Peter, just give us a give us a 2-minute overview of InsurerCore and kind of what it does and how it's designed to help the industry.
Of course. So InsurerCore connects brokers to underwriters around risks and risk appetite. That's a simple pitch. So really, we created a platform where underwriters can come on, list their products, their capacity, what they do, the minimum premiums, add placing instructions, links to quote and bind, but also fill in their profiles and add a human element to what they're exposing there as well. Because as we all know, it's a human business insurance, and so by providing an online platform where people can come on, engage, network, socialize, and talk, and eventually go through the placement, we've actually sort of had fantastic take up, specifically during the lockdowns where there was no other option for it. If you were stuck at home and your current network maybe couldn't provide you with the capacity you needed or didn't want to write the risk you wanted, there was nowhere else to turn. Brokers were Googling and sending messages to inquiries at emails, and they're not getting a response. So by being able to come onto InsurerCore, brokers can search via classes of business, via location of offices, via the capacity they're looking for, whether they're looking for delegated authority, open market, whatever that may be, filter through, identify products and companies, but then actually view the individuals behind them and start a chat. And it's a big belief of InsurerCore that if you put the two professionals together, they will make it work. And really the start of all good business relationships starts with the meeting. If you don't meet the person, you can't get the business done. So really, we're here just to connect the market. We want to make sure that brokers have got a wider choice of capacity providers, so they're not necessarily just relying on their mates and the people they know and their private network, but can see all options out there, so they can offer a better selection to their clients. But also, it allows insurers, underwriters, wholesale brokers to better promote themselves, better promote their staff, better promote their USPs, and really better engage with the brokers, which I think is something which has been lacking during lockdown in particular, where we've all been sitting behind screens and locked away behind emails. So trying to add a personal touch to that is what's worked well for us.
Yeah, Peter, we've talked a lot, over the years about the importance of these relationships, and it's in a way it's sort of ironic you're the technology champion, because people might interpret that as being you're a technology geek, which I know you're not in that sense. You're more about your passion is all around technology that enables better, more efficient relationships, I guess, to happen. I've been doing some research recently about talking to brokers, and at the general level, one of the first things that these brokers say is, we need to sort the technology thing out. And I think what they're talking about is kind of communications type technology. And my sense is that a lot of the effort goes into, sort of back office systems and stuff like that, but not very much into this kind of more comsy area, where I also would say that, and I know we've talked about this and you can comment on it, we've seen through lockdown a lot of issues over service from underwriters and frustration with the process. So it's a very sort of long rambling question, but I'd be interested kind of in your views of where we are at the moment.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have seen technology as a replacement of the human element, and that's really the wrong way to look at it. It's an enhancement. If you look at sort of all the ways in which we interact, be that in personal lives or work lives, we don't ever try, for example, take Facebook. You don't use Facebook to replace actually having friends. You don't use LinkedIn to replace actually networking and going in. But you use it as a tool to supplement them. So after the networking event, you've got a way of following up, staying engaged, having better touch points, etc. But to look at technology as a way, which I think a lot of insurance practitioners are guilty of, is to look at it as a way of going, right, well, now we've got this bit of technology in place, we don't need to be involved. That can run. I mean, a lot of the sort of the quote and bind systems, a lot of the sort of e-trading platforms do try to go, well, look, it's a commoditized risk, put it through our placing platform. That's me as an underwriter done. You self-serve. And I think that's a massive mistake. And I think it's only going to be a detriment to not only the relationships between brokers and carriers, but also to the end client. I mean, at BrokerFest the other day, I think one thing that was mentioned is that the quote and bind systems are fantastic for a lot of risks, but at the same time, insurance is not a simple product. Even at the lowest end, even in mobile phone industry, there are complications within those contracts that often need a discussion, and they need good understanding as well. Now, if you're a broker and you've got a risk that might not be able to go straight through a quote and buying platform, but it's there and thereabouts. You need to have a human contact there to go, well, look, we've got this. Is there a discussion we can have around, maybe changing a couple of the terms, maybe, it might be slightly outside of appetite, but is there a conversation still to be had there? But brokers are now, they lack that connection between themselves and the underwriter to get that information, to be able to pass it on to their clients. If a client has a question on a wording, brokers, of course, should understand wordings, but it's not their wording, So sometimes a broker does need to refer back to the insurer to get a better understanding and clearly be able to clearly describe and talk to the client around what that offering is. And if they can't get through to an underwriter, they can't provide that advisory service back to the client themselves. So for me, I think a lot of the technology has been focusing on how do we speed things up and just get things through as quick as possible. And through that, we're losing a lot of the human touch points that would actually help further innovation, speed things up even more, and provide a better service to the end client at the end of the day. So to me, focusing on a hybrid solution where we help the human interaction work better is where technology can provide its most value, rather than something which can actually replace humans altogether.
And I think having that blended approach, I think I absolutely agree with you. I think it is finding that sweet spot where the blend of human interactions and using software or digital assistants or AI, whatever you want to call it, to enhance that and bring in data to help make a decision. I totally agree with you. Do you think if we then look at kind of market modernization, do you think that those central initiatives are going in the right direction, or do you think there are odds with the way that you kind of have a vision for technology working?
When you talk about the central initiatives, can we narrow down on what those are?
So if you look at the future at Lloyd's and the core data record and the digital spine and those types of kind of the digital initiatives that are coming out of the future at Lloyd's, I suppose.
I mean, the core data record, I think, is very valuable, but I think that, again, it's nothing that's new. I mean, Accord have been providing this as a service. We were using Accord standards to achieve that sort of standardized data for the past three odd years. So, that's always been there. But refining that and making that market wide, and is it same as everything. If everybody's talking the same language, business is always easier. And that's what the core data record is really trying to achieve. So, if you've got two systems talking to each other, one speaking French and one speaking English, you're going to have a mismatch. So making sure, and even if one's speaking slang that the other one doesn't understand, again, it just causes conflict and it causes confusion. So creating a clear view of what language should be used, when, where, and how that should be passed across between systems is absolutely invaluable. I don't think it's anything that's new, but I think it's something that definitely needs to be more widely adopted so that we know that everybody is speaking the same language. That would obviously definitely help the integration between platforms, and it would definitely increase adoption. In terms of the other bits, well, I'd like to see what else they're doing. I know the Blueprint 2 was the tyres hitting the track, but again, I've not seen anything really that's come out of that's been adopted and implemented by the market en masse. I know a few pilots have gone on, stuff like that, but beyond that, we're now 2-3 years into the blueprints, and I don't even want to think about what's been spent. But you would expect to see more coming out of it. I think I can't speak on behalf of Lloyd's and what they're trying to achieve with that. I do believe that obviously my personal opinion is that the market is relying far too heavily on Lloyd's to lead the modernisation efforts. I think that Lloyd's will have their own agenda and they are doing it in their own way. But there seems to be a sort of the market's holding its breath and waiting to see what Lloyd's delivers. And I can only look historically at what Lloyd's delivered in terms of modernisation, all going back to Connect, which was even before my time. And you think, if we're going to wait for them to really come through and deliver on a modernisation plan and actual tangible platforms that can be used and widely adopted by the market, we could be waiting a while. And I mean, PPL again was their flagship modernisation piece, and as we all know, that's now moved hands again and is going through a whole new process of becoming replatformed, as they call it. And speaking to underwriters in the market who are being forced to use it, they often get things through on PPO because it's been mandated, and they just email the broker and go, "Can you ping this through via email so I can actually underwrite it?" And you're almost adding to the workload by not doing that correctly, because really all you need to do is better connect a broker to an underwriter and make sure they can have the conversation and get something signed. I mean, if I'm honest with you, Adobe e-signatures have been around for a while now, and I think could have been a far cheaper, far easier way of producing a similar type of modernisation.
I agree with you, Peter. I think there's a tragic kind of lack of adoption of existing technology that's out there. I mean, a lot of brokers do use WhatsApp. That's pretty good. Or you could easily have a version of that, for all these platforms that everybody uses. The common standards are already out there, aren't they? I mean, I was just doing some documents this morning through DocuSign. That's fine, works pretty well, but you feel like a lot of money, as you say, is being spent on things that are already fairly simple. But there's an idea that you have to have a sort of an area where it's all mandated and controlled by somebody, which is not the way it works anywhere else.
I think you're right. I think ownership is something that keeps coming up quite a lot. I think it was mentioned in an article I read around sort of Lloyd's decision on sort of not using the Whitespace platform to on PPOs, because Lloyd's wanted ownership over the platform. And there's a big sort of saying in the tech world, which is don't build it, buy it. It's far easier. If there's technology that's been out there, it's been proven to work. There's been generally developed by people who've been who are passionate about that one specific area and have spent their life or the past 5-10 years developing that piece. For you to then go away without that expertise and try and build it yourself is always going to cause troubles, and you're very, very unlikely you're going to do it well, and the likelihood of you doing it better is very slim. And I do think that there's been a lack of adoption of existing systems. I mean, if you look at the best part of modernisation, is the adoption of Teams and Zoom. I mean, that was one of the most useful bits of technology throughout the lockdown. It wasn't developed specifically for the insurance market. It's not bespoke to insurance, but it's allowed people just to speak. And you're going back to that human element again. If you can put the two professionals together in a room, they'll get the business done. I mean, God, it used to be done on a fag packet, so, as long as they're in the room together and having a conversation, that's the main thing. So, going back to your question of, are they focusing on the right things? I think they're focusing on the right areas. I just think their approach is a sort of a legacy approach, which is, we want to build a big internal system for our use, bespoke to us. And as we see, it's costly, it's time consuming, and actually trying to get the user experience right, the adoption right, it is extremely difficult. And Lloyd's is a phenomenal institution, but they are not a technology company. They're not Microsoft, they're not Google, they're not Apple. They are very, very good at insurance. They're good at regulating insurance. They're good at building connections across the world within the insurance market. But do I believe that they're going to be the next sort of IBM of insurance, or the next big developer? I mean, are they going to produce, as we talk about, a metaverse of the insurance market? Will you be putting your glasses on in your flat and walking into a virtual Lloyd's anytime soon? I seriously doubt that, just because of the way that they've approached it. For them to try to build something that Facebook is looking at, I think, 5 odd years or 3 to 5 years before the metaverse can come into reality. If that's what Facebook are doing, a company that has made its living on being innovative, developing stuff at the rate of knots and all that, can Lloyd's really achieve that in the near future? I'm just skeptical, personally.
Yeah. So where would you say, Peter, technology is kind of, where you kind of, I mean, I know you're positive generally, but where would you say it's really got some traction potentially at the moment?
I mean, so for me, obviously, technology has been used. I mean, if you look at technology, emails, WhatsApp and all these things, they are being used by the market. But I mean, for me, where it can really add value to the insurance market quickly, and that would really benefit the end client is in claims, really. I mean, if you look at, FNOL, your first notification of loss, the use of telematics, the use of satellite data to better understand claims as they're happening. The more we can better serve the client and the insured, that's probably the best use of technology I could think of. At the end of the day, we are selling claims systems. We're not investing in technology that really helps the end client. I don't think we're investing it correctly. If you look at what we've got at the moment, I mean, again, a great company coming out of the Lloyd's Lab put telematics into container ships, so that even when the container ship's en route, you can tell internally whether there's an effect to the humidity, the temperature, and anything like that. So by the time that stock's arrived at port, the claim's paid. Now, if you're an insured there, then that's a fantastic result. And I think the more we can push in that direction, the better. In terms of how it's being used in sort of the core underwriting space, it's useful, certainly, and I think there's a lot of applications for it. There's a lot of fantastic technology companies out there that are doing great data models, that are being able to better predict things and all this. But still, it takes away a little bit. It lacks. By believing that they're going to have a huge impact on how underwriters work, I think is missing the point of how underwriters really underwrite risks. And when I was an underwriter back in the day, my senior underwriter told me, you're not underwriting a risk, you're underwriting a situation. Right? You've got a broker sitting in front of you. What company does that broker work for? What other risks has he brought you across? If you overprice this risk, what are you going to lose out, and will he present you risk going forward? There's so many other considerations beyond just an individual risk and the rating you want to apply to that when you're underwriting a risk. If you've got someone from Marsh sitting across from you, and your actuaries are telling you, this one you've got a price way up here, above all the other markets. Firstly, you lose out on underwriting that risk, which other people might be on, but also that broker's going to go, well, I'm not going to bring this to you again if those are the types of rates you're offering me. So then you miss out then on seeing other good risks that you might have priced a bit better. So you're not just underwriting, the storm cat risk for the next 2-3 years. You're underwriting, what does this risk, what's the situation around this risk, and how can I make sure that, going forward, this makes sense to my portfolio, and again, you have to think insurance is not just, if we accurately priced every single risk, it wouldn't be insurance at the end of the day. So, I do think we have to be careful about getting too excited around that. But yes,
I was going to say, Peter, that I was sitting with a head of underwriting this week, and one of the things he was saying was that he's really quite excited by technology which allows them to, to do modelling around risks, which is fair enough. And he was saying, that what that basically does there is allowed you to manage by exception, so that ought to speed up things too, because we talked a bit about this, not just that it was about the pricing, but it was about saying, look, what we're not going to do that, and we are going to do that, and that one is a really tricky one. So it seems to me that you need to get both sides of that equation right, but not have that imagining of or the idea that in a way that nobody then gets together and talks about it. It's kind of, to me, shoving off the stuff that's simple and straightforward, and you are going to write anyway, and even has a simple process on the claim, but then the other stuff is the whatever the 20% or the 10% that needs that interaction.
Absolutely, and as we sort of keep going back to, is that hybrid. The more information you have as an underwriter, obviously it's better. The better understanding of a risk, the more you can underwrite that situation. And so there's absolutely value in obviously this data coming through, but it has to be taken with a human element of, right, I'm underwriting a situation here, not an individual risk. So the more data we can gather, the more we can predict, the better you can build out your risk appetite, the better you can build out your portfolio. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to the underwriter sitting there at his box or at his desk with a broker sitting next to him, there are so many other not even human considerations, market considerations, context and everything else like that. So look, we're taking it back to the technology side. Look, there's been fantastic things coming out on the underwriting side. Actuaries, I think, jumping for joy with the amount of data now that they can get and how they can better produce these price units. But it all does really come back down to that relationship between the broker and the underwriter when it comes down to underwriting. So yes, it's going to make a difference, but I still think that we're not going to see a huge dramatic change anytime soon in the way in which underwriters look at a risk and understand a risk.
Certainly, in all the in all the events that we run for in the technology space, when we run the pre-event surveys, there's been a shift over the last years when we've asked the question, what is your priority for investment in technology, which was traditionally to cut costs, to find efficiencies, and just do stuff quicker, as you were talking about before, to improving that customer experience. And if you look outside of insurance, and if you see where the investment dollars are going, they are going into improving whoever their customers are experience, because that builds brand, it builds reputation, it allows you then to get more data on your customers, serve them better, and hopefully then retain them longer and probably sell them something else, as you were saying. So I think so. On the positive side, I think it's good that people are recognizing that, especially in the technology and operation space that I generally run the surveys. But I do think there's so much work that needs to be done just on the basics in order to even leverage some of the stuff we're talking about here. I really, even, and I've said this before, but even though we've managed to enable work from home very, very quickly, pretty much successfully, I still think there's tons of manual processing going on through just talking about PDFs. I mean, that's basically paper at the end of the day. It's just electronic paper. So there's quite a lot to do on the mindset shift, I suppose, as well.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, if you look at obviously the back office and the sort of processing of risks after the underwriting taking place, I think again huge value that can be provided by technologies there. I mean, I keep telling everybody my first job in insurance was the chief scanning officer, and my job was to literally just stand at a scanner, take all the paper files that people had brought in, and just put them through and get them into PDF form, and that was sort of stage one. I think we've moved away from that generally as a market now. There aren't many sort of young assistant underwriters standing at a scanner, and I like to think most of them one day will ask, what is a scanner? That would be a lovely day for me. But again, you are right. We've gone from that level to, well, now it's in a PDF and we're emailing it across. How do we get from there to the next step, where it is a bit of a better flow? And there are a number of companies out there that are dealing with that, and they're in the early stages, but they're getting wide adoption, and I do believe they're already bringing some enhancements to the market, especially on the schemes side, for example. I think there was a big thing a couple of years ago in terms of how insurers need to get better visibility and better understanding on what's going on with the schemes. And there's a lot of technology coming out now that really does help insurers get a better view of what's going on there, takes away a lot of the processing costs. And again, one of my third jobs in the market was dealing with bordereaux, and you get through an Excel spreadsheet that was half complete. And my next job for the week was chasing up the broker to say, can you fill this in? Can we get this information right? I'd then take that spreadsheet and I'd then enter that spreadsheet into our back-end system. It can then be digested.
I was going to say the other elephant in the room as well is whether there's a broker, whether there's an imperative burning platform for the brokers, really, isn't it? Because if you look at their financial performance, it's unbelievable. I mean, they're doing fantastically well, and yet they're very manually focused still in a lot of what they do. So you somehow maybe have to think about this as instead of sort of saying there's a rational argument for all this technology, you have to say, look, why is there a benefit to the broker? What's the real upside? And again, I've been doing some research. I can start to see what some of those things are, but that takes a different type of thinking. That isn't a kind of tech type thinking. It's just saying a customer experience type thinking, almost thinking of how do you make the job easier to do, more fun, fits with people who are working hybrid, part at home, part in the office, want to trade on the train, all that sort of stuff, I think is just not really being addressed enough at the moment for me.
No, I think the brokers are in a hard place. To me, the brokers are not at risk at all. They own the clients, and if we talk about how we better serve clients, that's the broker's job. That is where they're going to excel. They understand what their clients are doing. And the insurers, the underwriters are 2 steps away, if not more, from that end insured, and so they don't have the same understanding of what that client's looking for and how they want to be served. But at the same time, if you're a small broker and you're looking at obviously investing in systems, there aren't many out there that are cheap, for one, and easy to implement without obviously causing massive disruption to your current processes. I think that's an area where there needs to be sort of it needs to come from the insurers who have the money and can offer it to multiple brokers, and almost share that cost. Because if you're a small independent broker and you're going, right, we need to improve our operating systems in the back end and all these types of things, and you're going, right, okay, so I've got to invest X amount, which basically, almost wipes off your profits for the year. You're thinking, well, let's keep churning paper.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the day, who's suffering from that? It's the insurers at the other end who are still having to process that paper.
Yeah.
So it needs to be some more sort of market-wide collaboration, really, around how they can get that information out of brokers, rather than relying on the brokers to be able to provide it to them in a more digital way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, we had Lee Elliston on a few weeks ago, and we were talking there about the type of work, and he's keen as I am, and in terms of how you get that collaboration to work, is you do actually literally sit people down and start talking through things instead of blueprints, plans, wiring diagrams, because nobody relates to those in the real world. They don't, and especially when they don't get delivered for a long time, you lose, you lose interest. I mean, I lose interest almost straight away anyway with that sort of stuff. But it's like, it just doesn't pass the communication test, does it? Really, in a sense.
Well, no,
apart from anything else, it's boring.
but also it goes against the sort of what we've seen in terms of what's worked in terms of technology. Facebook didn't come up with a blueprint on how they're going to build Facebook. Google didn't come up with a blueprint of how they're going to build Google. It's iteration, in trial and error. And I think that's something that this market is very, very bad at.
Yeah.
What you should do is start with the simplest thing, right? And this is, sort of the mentality we brought into Insurer Call. What's the simplest way we can get from A to B and get our users from A to B? We don't have to map out a huge roadmap with all the bells and whistles and everything that's needed and all the people. You just need to focus on a very small thing. And what's the easiest way we can do that? See how that works, and from that you'll then learn. Right, okay, we did that. This is how people used it. We didn't get it right. Let's look at a different user journey and see if that works better. You try that. Okay, that didn't work. Try another. 3 or 4 iterations. You've got a very clear picture of how people will use it, what it will adopt. You can make assumptions until the cows come home. Really, you can, and you can go in. You can build out a £1 million blueprint of, I've talked to a few people and they said this, so we built that. And you're going, well, did you ever just sit them down and get them to do it? Because if you do that, generally they'll find a workaround. They won't go down the route you thought they would. The things that you thought were fantastic features just get left by the wayside and don't actually get touched. And you spent a lot of time money developing that.
Yeah, and I think that there's another thing here as well, Peter, which I've been struck by recently, which is many technology companies have absolutely zero interest in the users of their systems, in a sense that they're selling to the IT heads, and then once they've done that, that's it. They've done it, and it's contractually agreed, and they've got their money. So again, I think you kind of have to have that forcing of and moving the conversation on, really, from technologists talking about technology, because that seems to me that's just their sales pitch. None of that really works until a user gets hold of it.
Exactly, and I think there's a lot of buzzwords are getting mocked around the market. Trying to be cutting edge and all that. Now, we're trying to be cutting edge, but as we talk about, the rest of the world's on metaverse and insurance markets on MySpace. We're not cutting edge.
No.
Let's not go into AI and blockchain straight off the bat. Let's see what simpler technologies we could use to achieve very similar things. Yet people get caught up by, we're building this fantastic AI system using a blockchain platform and invest millions into it, and when it doesn't get delivered, and everyone goes, well, technology doesn't work for insurance. Thinking, well, no, you've approached it from a completely the wrong angle. You're trying to shoehorn in technology to deal with problems that potentially aren't there, rather than looking at the problems and going, what's the simplest and easiest form of technology we could use to solve that issue? And again, I think a lot of what's happened with the modernization of London markets has become a PR movement more than it's become actual we need to change. And you mentioned earlier a burning platform for brokers, but there's no burning platform as such for the market to then go, we've got to adopt it, we've got to be doing these things, otherwise it's all going to crash.
Well, that's a bit like it kind of reminds me a bit of climate change. As if you just paint the doomsday scenario, it looks too big a problem, right? But strategy normally, I was talking about someone at dinner last night about this, is what do you do with strategy? You break it down into its component parts and the things you can do. So you feel like if you could get some small victories in areas, and I'm really a big fan of comms, the sort of work you do, because it's all about the conversations, and it immediately benefits those people who are having those conversations if they can clear crap off and start talking more, because they sell more, right? So you can
Exactly.
But that doesn't appear to be where we are in the conversation. The conversation is, as you say, is a technologically driven, language conversation, which most people are turned off by it immediately.
Absolutely, because they can't see the actual application to their day to day. And you got to think, this is someone coming in who's got a pile of papers on their desk. They've got to get through them. They've got brokers knocking on the door going, you haven't come back to me on this, haven't come back to me on that. And you're going, right, we need you to learn this whole new system of, it's got all these bells and whistles, and it'll do exactly what you're doing with a pen and paper. And you're like, well, I've got my pen and paper here. It's very simple. I know how to do it. Why do I need to adopt this?
Well,
why do I need to change my habits?
I run a business. I'm sure Jeremy and we all have the same thing, isn't it? No matter what we think about technology or advancement in those areas, there are always people in your team who go, "I've got this lovely bit of software that can do X, Y, and Z," and you immediately think, "Well, absolutely fine," but the learning curve is days or weeks, and that's just me, not everybody else in the team. So although that one person loves that piece of software and kind of might get it, it's an incredibly, tricky sell-in to get people to say, yeah, we'll adopt, right? And I think that's the other thing, is that you've got to have stuff that to some extent is already out there and people use it without thinking about it.
I mean, just to give you an example, we as a company, being a tech company, wanted to adopt, a new CRM system. So, we tried HubSpot and a few others, Pipedrive, etc. So we did HubSpot for a while. And what we realized, we had all these bells and whistles to give us fancy graphs and all this lovely information, but we didn't look at it. And then it stopped getting filled in, because actually to fill it in is actually a little bit more complicated. And we've now reverted back to a spreadsheet, because really what we need to know is very simple things.
Yeah.
The spreadsheet can achieve that. We can filter by the stuff we need, and we can see the information we want when we want it. We don't need to go straight away into the all singing, all dancing. Eventually, we will take what we've got from that spreadsheet and go, right, now it's too big to manage. Now we need to look at the next stage, and now we can move that across. And that will be a much far smoother transition than here's a massive, complicated thing with all the bits you need to do in it. You sort of look at it and you're almost overwhelmed to a point. Simple process.
I think
is a way to go.
I think all three of us, interestingly, have a kind of database part of our business where we need that technology to work, do the heavy lifting, don't we? And that's an investment and where you would invest. But when it comes, as you say, to that sales comms technology, it's quite light touch. It does not need that much. And I'm a bit depressed now, Peter, because we're just adopting our new CRM system. But luckily Jeremy's got it.
Platforms, but yeah,
we're getting the same one as Jeremy's got, so it does work for him apparently. So that's encouraging. But anyway, the thing is that I've always said, whenever we've done this, whatever we're using, as the latest CRM solution, and having been the victim of the Salesforce pitch, I'm sure we've all had that. You think, my God, I don't need very much. And I know exactly what I need because I know how to sell stuff. And that's the same thing we've got here is brokers know how to sell stuff. They're good at it, and the way the broking world works is that it trains people up really quickly to sell effectively, or they don't last very long. So you're really just going to, to me, technology just needs to fit with that and enable that and make it smoother and better, and not, come up with some fancy pants solution.
What was I saying? It's like using a sort of a power screwdriver when you're trying to change your glasses.
Yeah.
So sometimes a small, simple tool is far easier and more effective and better to use than having a big old power drill with a tiny little screw head on it that you just want to unscrew your glasses screw.
Yeah.
And it's sort of that, and everyone loves a power tool. It looks cool, it's fancy, and it feels good when you hold it. It's nice and heavy, but is it required to do the job you're looking for it to do?
No, you're right. I bought a circular saw a few months ago in lockdown, and I was quite proud of it. And I told a lot of people about it, and I've used it once.
And are your glasses better now, Ben, or worse?
Well, I lost a few pairs when I did it, which is why I haven't used it again. Yeah.
Yeah. You be careful with those power tools.
I've
That
got,
Peter-
I've got manual.
Yeah, Peter, it's always a great pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise.
And I'm sure we'll invite you back in a few months' time. Perhaps when you've got another award or something like that.
Oh, so yeah, so a couple of years.
Perhaps when this one's worn off, Jeremy.
Yeah, maybe.
When he's just a normal person again.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I'm no longer a champion.
Exactly. You're always
Peter-
a champion to us, Peter.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's very kind of you, Ben. Very kind.
Peter, thanks very much for joining us today, and we'll see you soon.
Likewise. Thanks, guys. Take
Cheers.
care.
Bye. Always great to talk to Peter. It's always refreshing to have that view, and also just to reinforce some of the ideas that we talk about a lot with a with a third party who's a bit younger than us. Yeah,
Yeah, he's really good. I mean, I think he's got better since he's had that champion status as well. There's a certain swaggering confidence there, isn't there, that you and I need to be nominated for an award and win it. Because we need that boost.
The only way that's going to happen is if we run and judge the award ceremony.
Well, that could happen, Jeremy.
I think it could. Yeah, it's whether any of our listeners would actually vote for us. They probably wouldn't. But anyway, you never know.
Of course they no.
Okay, so what are you doing this weekend, Ben? Anything planned? It's Remembrance Sunday, isn't it?
Yeah, not a lot. I've got a big week next week. We've got a couple of events we're doing. I'm speaking at a partner conference for one of my clients, which should be interesting. We're running an employer brand event, which you're coming to. So I'm actually going to have to do a bit of prep. No, I've got in fact, my eldest son's coming over. He's just joined the Daily Telegraph, so he's going to tell me about what's really happening in the news.
Good. All right. Well, maybe we can run a feature next week. What's really happening in the news?
Yeah, the things you never knew.
Yeah, that'd be good. I don't think I'm doing it. I'm going to drag the kids to the Remembrance service thingy. Make them sit through it, get them off the tablets or whatever for a bit.
No, that's absolutely right. Yeah, or get them out of the metaverse in future, won't it?
Oh God, yeah. Imagine that. Anyway, they watched it. Yeah, that was the thing. They watched Ready Player One, which is a great film, by the way. But that is essentially the metaverse sitting there. But good. Right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We shall see you next week. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye.